Let's go talk about the news. So, Andy, what you got?
Just four things that have sort of come to my attention this week, which might be interesting for ourselves and everybody watching. Two of my long-standing favourite bands are joining together for a couple of UK shows: Paradise Lost and My Dying Bride.
What?
It's 30 years since my Paradise Lost's album Icon was released, and sort of reading into it, they want to do a re-release to celebrate the anniversary, but I don't know all the details, but they don't own the rights to that album or the artwork. So they're going to re-record it with new artwork, and they're doing a couple of shows in December with My Dying Bride. So that's something to look forward to.
I am going to that. Now I've got to go to that. Two of my favourite bands as well. Legends.
Yeah. I can't remember where they are. There's a London show and another one. But yeah, that's all over the media. You should be able to find that. That's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
My friend and front man of For the Hornets, who played at Club 85, he does a number of shows, but the one to look forward to coming up in June, he's doing a Rammstein set, covering some Rammstein songs, which is quite a challenge in itself with the language. One man show at the 66 Bar in Cambridge on June the 29th. Another one of my favourite bands returned to Europe and the UK, Obituary. They toured their new album in February. I had the pleasure of seeing them at the... Where did we go? Can't remember. Somewhere in
Was it the Electric Ballroom?
It's Ballroom, right?
Ballroom. Thank you, Kirk. Yeah, that was it. With Conjurer. Really good night. They're touring again. But I'm usually not doing any London dates. But perhaps they're sort of visiting the cities they didn't sort of cover before. Norwich is certainly one of them, I remember. And I just thought it's fairly unusual for an American band to come to Europe and the UK in quick succession, and sort of twice in a year within a matter of sort of 6 months or so. That's happening in August. And lastly, from me, our friends Kane are touring with Chris Holmes, formerly of Wasp.
Yeah, got that.
In June, so that's something to look forward to. One reason why I picked this out is Rage Sadler, the vocalist guitarist, is obviously suffering with a shoulder issue, and he's scheduled to have an operation at the end of this sort of run of dates, which I think sort of 8 or so shows, and he's concerned and has shared the news that he might not be able to play guitar again. And I'm thinking, well, obviously you can now, and it'd be a real shame if you have an operation to fix this problem that then stops you doing the thing that you love so much. But I'm guessing he's got a problem, and he's getting through it somehow with medication and stamina and endurance, and he needs sorting out. But if he has to sort of restructure his fantastic band, that'd be a real shame. So we wish him well and good luck on those run of shows.
Yeah, no, very, very true. I completely forgot about Kane, and yes, and also if you're ever looking for doing a Patreon, join Kane's one, because they give you the most amount of stuff for their Patreon deal I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, really good.
If you get
I jumped on that from your recommendation, Dave, and you get the usual sort of updates, but you say what you get for your bundle is really impressive, isn't it?
Insane. I told him 2 years ago, I was like, you need to up, because it used to be that he was giving stuff away for like £1. You would join on a £1 deal and get a t-shirt at the end of the year. I'm like, hang on, so I give you 12 quid, get all the updates, and you send me a patch and t-shirt as well. I'm like, that ain't right, mate. You've got to up that money. You've got to do it. You've got to be at least 3 quid, 4 quid, 5 quid. And they've still got all those deals, and you get I think in the £3 deal you get an EP that they record an EP just for the Patreons every year.
This one, I think I'm right in saying it's like a 5-disc box set which is only available to patrons. I mean that's damn impressive, isn't it? And as you say, a t-shirt and a patch.
And a patch as well for and you pay 30, 40 quid in the year for that. I'm like, that's insane. I wonder
if he'll include a cover of that shite indie band Wet Leg, who he hates so much. Do you remember in your interview you were saying that
they've done a song, haven't they?
He covered it, and he said they had a few promoters asking him to play indie shows. We're like, I don't think you understand the context of our cover. Is it
a cover, or is it a sort of song about Wet Leg?
I thought it was. Maybe he's had he's added his own lyrics in.
I think
That'd be funny. Maybe record that for the Patreons.
Yeah, they could do something like that. Okay. Any other? So that's all your news, Kirk. You got any news?
Yes.
No, I've just been reviewing albums all week. I don't really, when I get press releases in, I only really read the ones about upcoming albums.
Okay.
So
I've got a few things.
Unfortunately, I don't know what Corey Taylor of Slipknot has said this week as a soundbite.
Okay, fine. Okay, a couple of topics. Now, this one's more of just an affair. I forgot. I had the live stuff going on, but something that was quite interesting. I thought that a band has done. So, Ice Nine Kills have announced that for Saturday, the 3rd of June, they're going to be doing a pop-up chop shop. I'm not even sure what a chop shop is, but okay. Held at the Three Locks Brewing Company. The event will include exclusive merchandise, makeup artists, themed food and drinks, and much more. Fans are also encouraged to embrace their inner psychos and dress up for the occasion. And I believe it's all free entry as well. So it's not ticketed event or anything. So that's kind of cool by the band to kind of do these different events and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think there's a bit of a promo thing there going on. But yeah, definitely if that's another thing you haven't got, if you've got time before going to like the cart and horses or in Stratford and watching the bands, go do that. Okay, so here's another one. So Paramore, the band, and it's not. I'm not going to talk about the band Paramore too much. It's just a case of it. So it gets me onto another topic. But Paramore wrote in a commentary about Paramore. Hayley Williams tells fans to not vote for DeSantis in America's upcoming elections. So my question here for us to talk about here is: you don't see this in English bands. English bands getting involved in politics, but American bands seem to be taking sides in Democrat, Republicans, and there's almost this element of metal bands, rock bands over there get asked about their political viewpoints and their sway of opinion. I don't understand why that has become such a thing. Because if you remember, there was even a thing back in the early 90s where they had Rock the Vote, and that was hosted by Dave Mustaine.
Yeah, on MTV. And then you had the likes of Pearl Jam and L7 who were very much for abortion rights, weren't they, or right to autonomy.
Yeah. Is it just me that I've only really ever seen this in America? Have you guys had experience of this anywhere else where rock musicians, metal bands get involved and have a political statements?
It could be that they're not taken as seriously in this country because the mainstream press doesn't like heavy metal, as they call it, to be honest, does it? You look at the 80s, obviously the Smiths were political, but they were quite subtle with it. You knew just from a Morrissey interview that he hated the Thatcher government. The irony is he's actually now become quite right-wing, hasn't he? I can't really think of any bands that have a political acerbity to their message, especially in the heavy music here. I mean, I know that we've got black metal bands and some of that can be quite political in an abstract kind of way. It's more an existential thing, isn't it? Almost like they're drawing on Friedrich Nietzsche. But yeah, in America, I think one of the seminal albums that got a lot of kudos over here was that Green Day album, American Idiot, wasn't it?
Yeah.
As a political statement against the Republican Party and the war in Iraq. So,
because they do write a lot more political driven songs, because I know Evanescence have written stuff about politics. We've seen it all from people like Five Finger Death Punch, a very political band in what they do, a lot of topics in there. I mean, would it mean, like for you, Andy, if Aaron Stainthorpe came out and he started talking about Labour and how Keir Starmer was so right about what he would do and how Labour is the right way, and that's how would that sway your opinion in an election because Aaron Stainthorpe is pro-Labour?
It wouldn't sway my view at all, to be honest, but I'd find it very strange and quite unnerving that somebody would, detach themselves from their band and their music to sort of deliver a political message, especially something like Aaron Stainthorpe. I was going to say the only sort of band that jumps to mind that do have a political message and do, quite forthright and outspoken about it is Napalm Death by Andy Greenaway. I think there's any doubt about his views on British politics. They've always had that element in the songs and the lyrics. It's a topic that forms a lot of their songs, where death, doom, depression, sorrow forms doom metal songs. It's almost like elements of I'm sure there's more hardcore bands that do have, especially, and going back to early English punk, there's certainly political statements in a lot of their music as well. But
anti-establishment.
Somebody I admire very much, who doesn't sing about political statements and current affairs in their songs, coming out with their views and their viewpoints about the important topics of the day, wouldn't swing my vote, as it were. But I'd certainly be interested. But I wouldn't want them then throwing that into their music that they haven't done before. But everyone's entitled to their opinion, and I'd certainly listen to it. Yeah,
it's because. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, do you remember leading up to COVID when we had the general election here in 2019? One thing that did shock me, Kerrang! Magazine put Jeremy Corbyn on the front. I was really surprised by it because, I mean, come on, putting a political figure on the front, hard left or leaning left, as you call him. I just think you're making if you've got a platform, why not do it? But I think he's such a divisive figure. I was just shocked that they'd gone that far. You didn't see Metal Hammer do that, for example. And you don't see rock and metal publications do that either, because they want as many people as possible to read the magazine, and often it makes sense to keep politics out of it, doesn't it? I don't think it's a bad thing. Obviously, if you're an artist and you've got a platform like that band we reviewed, Stray from the Path, clearly they're very anti-capitalist in their message, aren't they? Yeah. Vitriolic, bit like Napalm Death in the, I don't want to use the word rhetoric because that would mean it's insincere and cliche-ridden, and it's not. They don't sound anything like Napalm Death. They're more like Rage Against the Machine, aren't they? But again, they're an American band. They're from Long Island, New York, I believe, aren't they? But you're right, Napalm Death are the main one that comes to mind in the extreme metal scene. In the rock scene, you've always had bands like the Manic Street Preachers, who have written some of the greatest songs of all time in the 90s, certainly the lyrics. They were always political. Then you'd have even some of the first Britpop bands were political. Blur and Suede, they were talking about the rigid uniformity of middle class life, for example, but that's not going to get
so that's where
the streets of London, is it?
So I think there are bands here in the UK and of course in other countries in the world that are politically motivated in a general sort, but not current affairs. I think current affairs is the issue. When metal bands get asked about the current affairs in political life, you're like, if someone asks, sort of pulled over I don't know, any of the big metal bands. So Bruce pulled over Bruce Dickinson and asked him about, does Brexit impact? Now, if they asked it from a touring point of view, fair enough, I'd understand that. But when they ask about how do you sit on the Brit Leave Remain, I don't care. I just want to have a new Iron Maiden album. That sounds good. And watch. I don't want to know about that from metalers, but it seems such a thing that the Americans do.
It is relevant, like you said, Dave. Has Brexit affected? People had problems sending merch and just basic parcels and packages to Europe. I know. Speaking to Jonathan Seeley from Iron Void, they had problem dispatching T-shirts to their European fans. So I'll be interested to hear about that. How does it affect touring? How does it affect your overseas merch sales, for example? But what their personal views on whether we should have left the EU or whether we should, I really couldn't give a crap. Yeah, exactly.
So it's when they ask, I've seen them ask people like that. They'll ask them, how's it impacted you? So they'll give you this impact and they go, well, we're having really issues with visas getting abroad. And then they ask these people, so what do you think should happen? I'm like, sorry, when did they become ununderstanding about political affairs? How? They don't. They're a musician. They just need to get their visas. They need to be on a plane, on a boat, whatever they need to do, and get over there and be able to tour easily. It's not down to them to come up with the solutions to that problem. That's not what their training is for. So stop asking them how to fix a problem.
What did Hayley Williams say then? Did she urge people not to vote for...
Not to vote for Ron DeSantis in the upcoming elections? Because he's running up against Trump
for the nomination. Yeah, he is controversial because he's very much got what people would consider a Christian right.
Would that mean that she then saying? Was she then saying that she'll? If you read that in one way, you could say, and then she's saying vote for Trump instead.
Yeah, true, but I think I don't even know her political views. I'm just assuming she's quite a progressive person. I don't know why.
It just sounded a bit weird because when I was reading, I was going through all the rock news, and I'm like, what's this got? Who cares what Hayley Williams thinks about?
Yeah, I mean, this guy though is doing his utmost to try to eliminate, teaching of homosexuality in schools, things like that. He's picked a spat with Disney, the Disney Corporation, for being too
He hates
woke
Mickey
and
Mouse.
withdrawn tax subsidies for them. So he's
enough.
a figure on the right that would be considered a populist. I don't know what her views are. I'm assuming that she probably votes Democrats, and she's
most like, well, she's
appalled
sensible
by what
in
he
that
stands
sense.
for.
Not Republicans like those nut jobs over there. Yes, I called you nut jobs, you Republican nut jobs.
I'd probably vote for them.
That's about 50% of the American audience offended.
Hey, I'm a conservative, even though I listen to metal.
Okay, next topic that came up. So architects have split with Josh Middleton of Silosis. I don't know the reason behind it, but it is amicable. They're all still friends and everything. I think it was just his priorities for Silosis. Lots going on there, and what they want to do are maybe two different things now going forward. I think that might be the reason. Thoughts on this one?
Was he guitarist and vocalist for Architects? I'm not familiar with them. And
He's the lead guitarist in Architects.
all right.
Yeah. I think it's right that he focuses on Silosis.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
He's been architect since what, 2016?
Yeah, Tom Searle died, didn't he? One of the
Yeah.
founding members. His brother's still in the band, obviously. This is a band that have had the last two albums have got to #1 in the UK albums chart. So we're talking about a real monumental band in contemporary rock and metal. I didn't really enjoy the last two albums. The one they did last year was a bit of a return to form. It was more of an industrial metal album. But I think that Josh has just been underused in this band. It was a good earner for him. No need to question his integrity. This is a respected band in contemporary circles. I've never really understood the great appeal of this band because they have an absolute vociferous fan base. To me, they just started out as Dillinger Escape Plan clones. Then they turned into more of a metalcore band, and they're one of the most influential bands on contemporary metalcore, aren't they? But I just think he was probably getting bored in that band. The last two albums really did not use any of his talents, and this is a guy who's classically trained. Silosis are a great thrash band. They're signed to Nuclear Blast, which is as big a label as Rise Records that Architects are on, and he's probably struggling to balance the two as well.
Fair enough. I just want to say hello to Holly and Chris, who are in the chat. We know who Holly is from Silver Hex. I'm not sure who Chris is. So Chris, it just says Chris, and I can't see a picture, so apologies. I don't know which Chris you are. We know a few Chris's. And Holly, we have already given a shout out about Silver Hex's Don't You Want Me? I've told people to go check it out earlier in the stream, so please do that. Okay, I had another one here, but I'm going to come back to this one. Here's an interesting one. This is so Roger Waters is under investigation by German authorities for wearing a jacket. He has worn this jacket for years since the 1982 film The Wall. It's because he played a show in Germany, and he wore the jacket, which he's worn regular times on lots of gigs all the time, no issues. But because in this film it's got red armbands, it's a black jacket, and the symbols are actually crossed hammers, and it's in the same places where the Nazi symbols were, and they have a very much a thing about basically no Nazi symbolism can be used anywhere in Germany, etc. So he is now under investigation, even though he's worn this jacket for years at all his live shows.
Sorry, Dave, I'm really sorry. I was looking at the comments trying to identify Chris. I think it's Chris Stroud from Earthbound. So I completely missed the beginning of your statement. Who are we talking about?
Roger Waters.
Roger Waters. Okay.
Yeah.
So yes,
Who's
he's
Roger
wearing
Waters?
this jacket.
I know.
So what's your thoughts on this? I mean, question is, surely he must have had someone before he went on stage went, you know what, you're in Germany, mate. This is a bit of a risky thing to do.
You'd have thought so, yeah.
Don't wear the jacket tonight. Or maybe common sense would go, I won't wear the jacket tonight. Or did he just think, well, I've been using this for the last 50 years or 40 years or something, playing with this live, and he's probably played Germany before with this jacket and never had a problem. So maybe he was like, nah, I'm just going to do it. It's what I do. They knew what they booked the show. They knew what I was going to do it.
He is quite outspoken on his criticism of the Republic of Israel, isn't he? And
Is he? Oh, right. Okay.
I think he has used rhetoric in the past associating Israeli settlers with Nazis, which I think is quite offensive, even though, let's be honest, that is an apartheid occupation, isn't it? So maybe there's some irony that he's wearing this insignia and he's maybe trying to be subtle in purveying that message, which sometimes does cross over into anti-Semitism. I don't think he is anti-Semitic, Roger Waters, but he's certainly on the hard left of the political spectrum. So I'm not surprised that he's done some there, but I agree with you, Dave. Did no one maybe just say, oh, by the way, you're wearing an insignia that might offend Germans, never mind Jewish people, because of their horrendous past in the first half of the 20th century. So the people are advising him are either telling him everything he wants to hear and being sycophantic, or he just doesn't listen to them.
Yeah, I don't know what he's done. It's a weird one. I personally would just thought it's an odd one for him to have done if that has been the background. If he has played Germany before, then there's precedent that it's been allowed. But yeah, odd thing to think about. Or is it the fact that society's just he's got a red armband with 2 hammers on? It's not like he's actually got a Nazi symbol on his jacket. It's just the fact that it's a boot jacket with red armbands on with 2 hammers on it. Is it nitpicking? It's an assumption that he was a Nazi jacket.
I mean, we don't want to go too. I suppose we're going into a rabbit hole here. But if that was a coloured person wearing that insignia, would it be as offensive? Probably wouldn't be, would it? It might even be allowed. Maybe best not to continue that.
No, it's an odd one.
There are double standards at play here.
Okay, let's move on to some other stories then. So, Nickelback's Chad Kroeger has stated that most musicians are lazy. Now, I'm going to explain this in a bit more detail what he actually means, because that's the headline. There is a bit more context about what he means there. So he says that most musicians entering the industry are because they don't want to get a real job. And he says he's been in studios with hundreds of newer musicians, and they're like, bro, that was like 10 minutes solid, dude. Like, let's just do something else. So they don't want to craft a song. They want to just lay it out quickly. Bam, bam, bam. Move on to another track. Release it. Done. He says that they're basically a lot half-assed in this. They don't want to put the effort in. They don't want to make it sound really good. Yeah, and that's why he says that most musicians going into music now are lazy. I think there's one thing, though. He says they're getting into music because they don't want to get a real job. Who makes money in music anymore? There isn't really money to be made in music. It's passion. Unless you're in one of these big touring bands, you don't really make money. You're hoping that you can cover your expenses in most cases. But I would say listening to like our live scene in the Hertfordshire area, I don't think anyone's lazy in their studio time. These guys, everyone we know crafts their songs. But yeah, I suppose there are some of the younger bands that we may have seen come through that you could definitely say there's a bit more, maybe rushed to the live performance stage a bit early.
I think we touched on that on some of our summaries of their performances. You know,
yeah,
maybe like a year too soon from the entering the competition. But what Chad Kroeger said, you know, from his experiences of you know his scene and his, you know, going to studios, I'm sure he's right. You know, perhaps there is a tendency to let's get this track down, let's get it done. Don't worry if it's not perfect, let's move on to the next one. But you know, I echo what you say about our peers, our bands here in Hertfordshire. That they know what's expected, so they're going to try and put out the best EP they can. They're going to work hard in the rehearsal studio so they have the best live performances. We've seen that in the competition in Metal to Masses and also the other live shows. You know, nobody's been sloppy. No one's been under rehearsed or throwing in songs that are not ready. Then, you know, people they've said this is a new one. First time I play it live, let's see how it goes. And from my ears and my eyes, it's gone really well.
Yeah,
you know, those first plays of brand new songs, they haven't been half-assed. They haven't been, you can tell that bit isn't right. You know, they've been really good performances.
I mean, I think also with a lot of the more technical metal, there's no way that you could write a more technical metalcore, mathcore song lazily. You can't go and knock one of those out in 10 minutes. There's far too much complexity. There could be a little bit of plagiarism is one way you could get around it. You could plagiarize the crap out of it from other people's songs and copy and paste a metalcore track together, and you would know it. We would know it. You'd hear it live and go, that sounds very formulaic. It sounds like something we've heard before. But I don't really feel like I've had much of that at all within our scene. So maybe it's because also I guess Nickelback they like to call themselves heavy metal. They're hard rock at best. They're just a good hard rock band. And I guess within hard rock it is a lot easier. You've got a lot more space to do. You can kind of work on blues scales and just have a bit of fun with it. So maybe that is where he's kind of going with it. But
it's interesting how he said bands don't want to sound good, because one of the criticisms certainly of modern metal is, the rise of quantized guitars and drum triggers and Pro Tools studio wizardry, and you have a backlash against that, don't you, with like primitive death metal and grindcore and black metal, which want to sound shit essentially, don't they? The 99% of the world's population. But with the rise of the bedroom producer, for example, Periphery, Misha Mansour and Adam Nolly Getgood, you've got no excuse now. For quite a reasonable amount of money, you can get good software and do a good demo before you go into the studio. So maybe it's the artist that Chad Kroger's working with. Maybe they're more used to just plugging in and playing live, and they're trying to keep that in the studio. They might not have done any pre-production, but yeah, tech death bands, gent bands, progressive metal bands, they're all virtuosos. They'll have done all that before they go into the studio.
Yeah. Okay. A couple of other bits of news. Nothing really to discuss though, but I thought I'd just throw it out there. So Shadowfall have started working on a new album. This is their first album since 2012's Fire from the Sky. So they reformed a couple of years back for some festivals and tours, etc. And now they've decided it wasn't originally to write anything new. They were just getting together to play some shows. But they've now announced that they are working on some new material. So that's good news from Shadowfall. If anyone remembers the band Kitty, back in the day, they never split up. They've been going strong anyway, but apparently they are now working on new music as well. They've had a bit of a break for a while, but the band Kitty are back, so they're working on some new stuff. So that's an interesting one.
Can I just urge anyone, by the way, they're not bad now, Kitty, but just listen to the two singles from their debut album. If you want to see all the new metal cliches in one video, it will make you laugh.
Oh, a bit of brackish and spit.
They're fucking awful, but they're so funny. Unintentionally, just enjoyable. But no, they're actually a decent band now, though, Kitty, aren't they?
They're a solid band. They've had a lot of lineup changes, but they're fun.
What's that, Andy?
The components, the cliches, was that intentional, or
no? That's what the music was in 1999.
Yeah.
Shout out to the guys from Dave. Shout out to the guys from Action Vengeance who have joined us. Thanks very much for watching.
Legends.
Thank you very much, guys. Okay, two last topics to cover. So, Queen or Queen's music catalogue could potentially be sold for $1 billion this year.
To a hedge fund, no doubt.
But people like Disney are trying to buy it.
I'm not surprised.
The main components are basically the three surviving members, obviously, and Freddie Mercury's estate. It's got the split. Now the question is, so for $1 billion, that's a decent chunk of change there. So effectively, you're talking what, 250 million each. The question is, should they sell it? Now you might go, because this is the question: is do you think $1 billion, lot of ching? If you do 1 billion streams, which Bohemian Rhapsody has done on Spotify, 1 billion streams equals $3 million is what they will earn in revenue from that streaming platform. Now, obviously it's incremental, it's on every single song as well. So are they potentially losing revenue? Or do you reckon, like, for instance, paying $1 billion for the Queen's music catalogue, is that overestimating? Is that too much money to spend on that?
We do have some examples of this. So do you remember Michael Jackson famously bought the rights to the Beatles back in the 80s, which really angered Paul McCartney? What a great investment by Michael Jackson. And then I think it was the early 90s, David Bowie securitized the rights to his songs and sold them, I think it was to a hedge fund. and he made millions out of that. And obviously that hedge fund, that's just a secure income stream, isn't it? David Bowie's music's going to live on, we like to say forever, but it's certainly not going to slow down the number of streams, and even physical album sales will still probably continue at a decent pace. Queen are in that position now where, say, we three founded a company and then 20 years later, we have a larger company coming in saying we want to acquire you, we don't want to do a hostile takeover, we're willing to buy you for £3 billion. That's the decision that the surviving team members are going to make. If you cash out, I mean, they're already made for life, but you are going up into the absolute 1% if you're not already there in Queen's terms. But they're going to certainly compound their wealth, aren't they, if they do it? So was your question, should they do it?
Should they or shouldn't they? Because it's... So the thing is, if they own the rights, I don't know how this works. If, let's say, Roger Daltrey... let's say Brian May, for instance. I'm sorry, I don't know why I said Roger. Yeah, but Brian May. Let's say, Brian May, he owns his rights. When he passes away, do the rights, his rights, go to his next of kin's to his estate? Then I assume.
Yeah,
it did with Freddie Mercury's estate, didn't it?
Yeah, I'd be surprised. I don't think it would pass back to EMI, would it? I think that's
no. So it should go to into your family's estate.
Yeah,
if that's the case, then I wouldn't sell for $1 billion, because do they really need any more money?
You're right.
And the reason why the people want to buy it is because basically they can still make royalties. I don't know why it is 70 years, but they've said up to 70 years after a performer passes away, they still own the rights to it. So for another 70 years after that performer's gone, they can still earn all the money off of it.
Can you think of anything?
Constant revenue, but so could the family. Yeah.
Can you think of anything better in terms of guaranteed passive income though than owning the rights to the Beatles catalog or Queen or the Who?
If I was Queen, I'd be like, no, because they'll do it, and they'll put like another one bites the dust on a Disney movie with Mickey Mouse jumping all over it. It'll be like ruining the bloody track.
It's ironic though, isn't it? Andy said 20 minutes ago, Andy, that Paradise Lost a re-recording icon because they don't own the rights. I think it was Music for Nations. Yeah, they came under, it might have been Sony, they came under one of the majors. And Taylor Swift did that, didn't she, with one of her albums, because she didn't own the publishing rights. So she re-recorded it, and rightly so, because she now owns those rights and made millions out of it. I think you learn a lot here about would you call it the predatory aspects of the music industry? It's changed so much now, hasn't it? I mean, the major labels rely on the equity stakes in Spotify, don't they? And the big streamers now with their back catalogs. That's why artists don't make much money, because Spotify I think they do hand over 2/3 of it, but out of that 2/3, so much of it goes to the record label, because these artists are locked into these, I think they're called recuperables, where you'll have bands, take like the Backstreet Boys, no, not the Backstreet Boys. What was the one with Justin Timberlake called? NSYNC. So
it's worrying the both of us. NSYNC, yeah, we know it.
Yeah, you'd have thought their debut album.
We couldn't tell you about any of your bloody death metal bands earlier.
But you'd have thought with that band, their debut album was one of the fastest selling albums in history, and they didn't make any money because when they read the contracts, they'd been living this lifestyle where they were all schooled, everything was paid for 3 years, and when they read the contracts, they were actually paying for that. The manager was taking it all back from their album sales. So yeah, there were some really disgusting practices in the 70s, in the 90s, and then famously Black Sabbath were one of the bands who were screwed over. When you look at their album sales in the mid 70s, they hardly saw any of that money.
Right, have a look at Chris's comments. He seems to have a knowledge of this situation regarding sort of artist rights and what happens to them when they pass.
Okay. So what was this? The copyright thing is due to Disney lobbying about keeping Mickey Mouse out of public domain. So that's why. So Mickey Mouse is definitely copyrighted, and basically all Disney characters are. So you just can't use a Disney character or anything. But I'm not sure if how that relates to the music side of it.
So can you just repeat Chris's comment there? Sorry.
It's in relation to copywriting and why they want to own the stakes, but.
I wonder would that ever expire, the copyright to Mickey Mouse?
I don't know, but he also says it'll be going up from 70 at some point, so the 70 years will be then extended to longer.
Because I think some bands, even metal bands, Periphery, the reason they didn't sign until the last minute for their debut album, every record company that approached them would have that legal term in the contract. You agree that the music will belong to us, or the publishing rights, in perpetuity, forever. That's ridiculous. When they were reading it, it's like, no, there's no point signing this contract. So they were able to negotiate. I think the first one came out via Roadrunner Records, and they own the rights. They had to really negotiate hard on that. But it'd be interesting to get Chris on a future show, probably, to give us more of a background on this.
Yeah, might be a future discussion topic on a monthly one when we get all the different people involved on that one. Right, let's move on to the very last topic then. Or news story. It's not really a news story, but it's a band that's been obviously floating around in the news or topics quite a lot. So Sleep Token. So we're going to talk a little bit about Sleep Token today. So whether you know much about the band or you've never heard the band, what you can say is there's a lot of press about them, there's a lot of talking about them. There's a lot of YouTube channels about them. In the broadest aspect, for anyone that's not really aware of them, which should be surprising, but they are a metal band. I'm just going to say metal because there's a lot of different styles of metal within their different. You can't just call them one particular style. And we talked about the other day about progressive metal on one of our videos. This is a band that I would talk about as progressive metal because they've got so many different elements that they use, and they've really kind of pushed metal boundaries. Well, I think they've pushed metal boundaries. They've used all the tools at their disposal, is a good way of putting it with them. They wear outfits so you don't really see their faces. They've got masks on, so it's all about hidden identity. So it's all about the music and it's about the theatrical elements, which is all very cool. And if I'd come across them on my own terms, I'd probably be all over this right now, going, fucking really love this band. But because everyone is, and all the comments, it's what's worse is when you read the comments in music videos about how this is the most amazing band in the world. I mean, they're so great. I listened to them today and my whole world's changed. I'm like, do you know what? I can't do that. I don't want to become this person.
Mm-hmm.
It's put me off the band to the point where I've listened to them and I'm like, I went in to listen to them with the wrong headspace. I didn't go in there wanting to really enjoy it. I was like, no, okay, what's this all about then?
Yeah.
And I listened to it. I was like, yeah, solid tracks, but I don't understand this radical obsession. And I'm not going to just say it's not just Sleep Token. There are other bands out there like that. We've seen it. We talked about a band yesterday when we reacted to Liliac, and we talked about The Warning and how obsessive bands are. We had the Love Bites fans. They're all nuts. Well, the bulk of them are anyway that come on the channel. But there's an obsession with these people. And I don't quite understand when you... Have either of you guys ever become that obsessed with a band where you defend it to the hilt, you will not have a bad word said about this band, you will almost literally try to rip someone's... Like if someone came up to you and said a bad word about them, you'd be like, I'm not going to be friends with you anymore, sorry. Screw you, go away. You don't know what you're talking about. Have either of you been in that position? Probably you, Kirk, with Faith No More, probably.
It was I would say the main one was the Smashing Pumpkins because they got me into rock music, and yeah, I do remember they put out that '95 double album, Melancholy Infinite Sadness, probably the best rock album of the '90s, and then he turned away from heavy music, and I was always defending him. I remember in the late '90s, was this early 2000s? You know when you had moshers and townies, it was called,
yeah.
And you'd be picked on just if you had long hair and was wearing a rock or metal t-shirt. I remember we got ambushed at a party. And I remember saying, "Fuck you, Billy Corgan's one of the best songwriters of all time." Like someone tried to punch me. It really kicked off. One of my friends got absolutely annihilated, got battered. But yeah, and when the 2000 album came out, Machina, the Machines of Gods, I remember being so disappointed by that album that I was in shock. I was like, everything that I stood for, my whole world has collapsed. I mean, now looking back, it's pathetic, isn't it? Well, I'm an adult. Now when I look back, it's like, why take it so seriously? But yeah.
Because it's one of the ones that I understand music can take you through. If you're having a bad time in your life, you can listen to some music and it can help you. That I understand. It's where we have people who will have listened to Sleep Token and go, this has changed me. I am a different person now. And I'm like, so, no, you've just listened to some music, mate. What the hell's wrong with you? Have you ever listened to anything and it's made you go, a complete like 180 in your life and you've changed. I can understand if you've been feeling low and you felt a bit better afterwards, but come on. You don't suddenly go out and go, right, I was going to my office job and I listened to this music and now I work in construction and I do this. And I'm like, no, I don't get it.
Dave, 1982, Woolworths, Iron Maiden, you see them perform which song on Top of the Pops at age 10? Surely that was a seminal moment in your life.
I think you're talking to me, aren't you?
That must be Andy. At 9/8,
talking to Dave. Sorry,
it
Andy.
was a seminal moment in my life, but I'm not going to start round with people because they say they don't like Iron Maiden. I really liked your Don't Hit Me. I'm going to say Billy Corgan's the best songwriter ever. He probably hit you harder, didn't he? No, it's. I mean, going back to what Dave said about I've listened to Sleep Token and it's turned my life around. I mean, do you not find it's when these bands get hyped? Like, it doesn't have to be bands. It could be anything. People seem to want to be part of that club. It's not good enough to say, oh, I quite like Sleep Token. You've got to say, oh, it's changed my life. So you're in that with those group of people who've also said that, sort of sheep mentality,
But do you also have the opposite though? Like, so you've said it's not just like with Sleep Token, but remember when Game of Thrones first came out? And like you had the first two seasons of it. Then everyone was like Game of Thrones. But then there was the other group that was like so proud they'd never watched a single episode of Game of Thrones. You're like, but you've never even bothered to give it a chance. But you were adamant that you were not going to watch it because everyone else is watching it.
Again, it's being part of a club, isn't it? Having a statement. I put it towards some of these extraordinary things people do just so they can say in their social circles, oh yes, I've done that.
Yeah.
I put a 10 up in the queue to get a centre court ticket to Wimbledon. Yeah, you're a tennis fan. So what?
Exactly.
Go and watch Wimbledon, but don't say, oh, I queued up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Oh, I pitched my 10 at 11 o'clock the night before. There's one-upmanship, isn't it?
And I'll be like, I turned on the telly just as it started. Hey!
Yeah, who's the mum?
There's a famous quote from one of my favourite economists called Friedrich von Hayek, and he said,
"Oh yeah, I love him. He's
Friedrich von Hayek, the Road to Serfdom legend, one of the great social science books of the 20th century." But he said, often people are attracted to clubs because they're often exclusionary, and it does make you feel important if you can exclude others. Can I just come in on Sleep Token though? You're right. I think the skepticism that they're going to face, certainly from the Puritans in metal, old school. One, they've not really relied on the press for this hype. It has just been almost like a spontaneous eruption when they released that single in February. Is it The Summoning, which I've got to say is a fantastic song. And their numbers just went from, they'd done 2 EPs and 2 albums before that single came out. And the numbers just exploded, their streaming numbers. And the good thing you would look at in terms of, if we say youth culture, it was really come from the bottom up. There was no, I wouldn't say critical praise from Kerrang, Metal Hammer, anything, Metal Sucks, whatever the website's like. There probably is now. And it was one that the fans who were there from the beginning can say, oh, we got them here. So that's probably why they're going to be passionate. I mean, I think what's unique about them is that, let's be honest, most metal bands are absolutely atrocious at writing pop songs. Other than Faith No More, and I suppose as a modern example, Ghost, there's very few who can actually write pop songs. I don't know why it is. Periphery are fucking useless at this. And they keep including 2 pop songs on each album now. It really annoys me. Sleep Token's standard of songwriting on the pop songs is phenomenal. Doesn't even matter what genre you're into. There is a bit too much of a reliance on the R&B vocal inflections. And I don't like modern R&B. I fucking hate that vocal.
I hate it when they do the R&B bit, yeah.
I know.
So you're not selling them to me. I mean, probably should have done some homework because, Dave, you did put this as a topic, but I've never listened to them.
You're
not for some elitist reason that, I'm not going to listen to what everybody else is. But, you say they write good pop songs, there's R&B moments. I mean,
that's progressive metal though, Andy, because the first half of the album that came out last Friday, Take Me Back to Eden, is fantastic. The second half is very poor. They just do 6 piano ballads in a row, and I'm just thinking, why have you squandered the momentum of side A of your record, which could have been a contender for album of the year? It's
Wow.
such a bloated, disjointed effort, that last album.
I like Andy's face. You're like pop songs, R&B, and then there's 6 piano ballads. He's like,
yeah, it's not. There is.
this is not metal.
There
It's
are
The
some.
piano ballads might be the appealing bit. You know, I like the piano ballad, but one of you said about some fans saying, "Oh, we've got you where you are today." Another sort of element to this, it might be sort of going on a little bit off topic, but there's certain contingency of music fans or perhaps any fans saying that they kind of disrespect people who've got into, let's use Sleep, take an example, from their recent explosion of popularity. You know, there's people who say, "Oh, well, I liked them before they even formed.
Yeah.
I was a fan of them before they even wrote their first song." You know, there's
only like the
that
demos.
as well, isn't
Yes.
there?
Okay, one last bit on this. So I just suddenly thought about it because we actually have an example of us doing this.
Do it,
Not
me.
this band, Pantera. So with the reform and then the reunion, and I was adamant. I'm like, and we were talking about this as an example of people saying they've seen Pantera, and the question being, yeah, but did you see the real Pantera? Did you see them like in the 90s, in the early 2000s? Oh no, I saw them in 2022 and 2023 or whatever, and I'll be like, that's not real Pantera, then, is it? That was their name. That was the saying. It said, yeah, but it's not Pantera. There's no. You don't have Vinny. You don't have Dimebag in there. That's the heart, the beating heart of Pantera. And am I then being that elitist guy that's sort of like people that are trying to come into it later on? And I'm like, go away. You can't have Pantera.
No. If you were speaking to someone who said, "Oh, did you see them when they used to release glam metal albums?" That's the real Pantera. No, I think
Has anyone ever said that?
that's a good comparison. You could say I've seen the real Pantera, the classic lineup, as opposed to the 2022 sort of reunion tour lineup. But you know, let's all appreciate each other's view and appreciate each other's moment of when we got into a particular band or genre without sort of, you know, being elite about it or one-upmanship about it.
I mean, you do have examples.
Mature's the word, you know. Let's be mature about it.
Yeah, exactly. You have example last week.
I don't wanna.
Do you know, Andy, you probably like the Norwegian black metal band Immortal, I assume, don't you? Because I know you're into your Mayhem and bands like that.
What's up, Vowels? Yeah, not a huge fan of, you know, but yeah, I know more.
Heard of them.
Well, they released an album last Friday, and there's only one original member left. And I've just reviewed it, and I've got to say, it's one of the best
7 out of 10
in the catalogue. No, 8 out of 10.
Who is it? Who's the original member? It's not a Bath, is it? He's gone.
No, because he left in 2015. Is it Damones? Is that how you pronounce his name? He was the guitarist who left in 1997.
Oh, right, yeah.
He returned in 2018 with the longtime drummer. Then they went to the courts to see who had the rights to the name. So he's ended up with it, I believe. And this album, which you're probably going to hate it without listening to it. I put it on and I was astonished how good it was, but it's so rare that happens, isn't it? Look at that Black Sabbath album from 1986, 7 Star. The major label forced Tony Iommi to release it under the Black Sabbath name. No one fucking likes that album.
Bruce Hamilton probably does.
Who?
Bruce from Devil Dan. That's
Oh,
right.
Bruce. Great guy.
Oh, probably. Right, well, that's it. That is our rock show for this week. Thank you very much for everyone that joined in for today's. And if you're watching it on the catch-up, thank you for watching it on catch-up. We will be back next week with more rock news, more live updates, more video releases, and more music releases. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.